Good evening, everyone. Hope you are all well. Welcome to this live A320NX from FlyByWire tutorial flight. We're going to head down from Manchester, England to London Gatwick, still England. It's a nice short flight, only about 45 minutes flying time, and we're just going to cover some of the basics, a couple of the more advanced parts of flying the A320NX. So if you're brand new, then this should be perfect for you. If you're more seasoned, I'm sure you'll still get something out of this, and hopefully we'll provide you with a little bit of entertainment as well. So if you're still launching your flight simulator, that is absolutely fine. As you can see, we're set up still on the desktop at the moment, and we'll be getting ready to go very soon. So what I need you guys to do, if you want to fly alongside, will not be on live multiplayer or anything like that. We will just be on our own in the simulator. So if you want to fly along, then I need you to get yourself set up at Manchester Airport, and I'm going to just go in, and you can pick any gate you wish. I shall pick gate number 10 just here. I'll set it on live weather as well. We will most likely wind back the time of day just so we can do the tutorial in the daytime. And the flight plan. So Don, you're just asking for the flight plan. Here is a copy of the flight plan, which I will pop into the chat on YouTube. Now, you don't need to go ahead and set this up. I will show you how to import this flight plan into your A320NX once we get in the flight deck. Very simple and straightforward to do. So, good evening to everyone who has joined in the chat this evening. Good evening, Lewis, Chris, Don, Matthew, Dave, LGM Lambs, thank you for joining this evening. And John Filton, Hyacinth, Simon, Nihal, Dark Fury, good to see you. Number 10OX, good afternoon indeed. I'm guessing you're not in the UK. Great that we have pilots from all over the world this evening. And Danny Rubble as well. Good evening. Good afternoon, Jason from Seattle. Indeed, good afternoon. So get yourself set up at Manchester Airport, as I am currently doing at the moment, and we're going to go through everything step by step. I've given you a copy of the operational flight plan, which you can either download or we're going to use on the FlyPad, so no need to worry about that. And I'm also going to show you how to import the flight plan that I'm using into your aircraft. So that's going to be nice and straightforward. HD, good evening, sir. Hope you're well. Nihal, late night from India. Oh, I bet. What time is it in India? It must be midnight, or rocking on that way. Bagisimi, good afternoon. You're currently flying from Manchester to Dusseldorf in Germany. That's a nice route. So only about a 50-minute flight, this one, so we're going to brief a few things regarding the approach as well whilst we're still on the ground here in Manchester, because we won't have too much time once we are airborne. But mainly for this fly-by-wire tutorial flight, we're just covering a lot of the basics. So if you are brand new to the A320 NX, then this will be a good place to start. Don, my operational flight looks different to the normal sim brief one. It is the Easyjet format layout, which you can set. So yep, I quite obviously use the Easyjet layout as you would imagine. Nihal, it's 2 AM. Lovely. Right, so as you can see, I'm on live time, live weather. I'm just going to head in and we're going to roll the time back, just because, as I say, if we're doing a tutorial flight, it's best to learn to fly in the daytime, right? So let me just hit the ready to fly button, and we'll jump straight in. What I like to do as well, just to make the maths kind of easy when messing around with the time and the time that we've got on the navigation displays, is I'll just like to roll it back 12 hours. So instead of 1951, we're going to go to 7 751, and let me just set that. There we go. Oh, hang on, I've set 751 local time. We want 751 UTC. There, that's better. Oh, 752 now. There we go. Okay. Oh, the Nightbot. The Nightbot is indeed drunk again. He drinks a lot, the Nightbot mod, doesn't he? Let me just get away with that. So whilst I'm just sorting the Nightbot out, you can see we are at Mako Simulation's beautiful looking Manchester airport. Really, really does look good. So here we are, and there's the Jet 2 hangar, the new control tower. And we've not got any air traffic control, anything like that. We're doing away. We don't need any other distractions. We're certainly not going to be on VATSIM, so it's just going to be you in your simulator, me here in my simulator, and whoever parked this last did a poor job. He's lined up with the 757s. It should be further back, as you can see. Never mind. Okay, so let's make a start, shall we? I'm just delaying things a little bit just so anyone new that is joining can get themselves set up. If you want to jump into the same stand, you can do. Obviously, it doesn't really matter. You can go to any that you wish. Don, yes, you can use that template as well. It's just one of the settings that you have in the simulator. Sorry, in SimBrief, a little drop down menu on the right hand side as you're setting your operational flight plan up. Aviation Forever, this is not freeware scenery, this is payware scenery from Mako Simulations, but doesn't it look fantastic? As Manchester, my local airport that I fly out of quite a bit, it's well worth having. Right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the FlyPad turned on, so we'll get that done. And then this is where you guys can start to get your information synchronized with mine. So I'm just going to hold the right Alt key and pop that out so that I'm now typing into this window rather than to the FlyPad directly. And I'm going to type in my username, Easyjetsimpilot, and any one of you can use this username, as it will be set up for the flight plan that I've created on SimBrief. So you can just type that in there. Once you've done that, if you then go to the dashboard and select from SimBrief, we should get, there it is, all the information we require. And with that, on the dispatch page and the operational flight plan, you've got the operational flight plan that we are going to be using tonight as well. So we've got our departing runway, we've got our standard instrument departure, we've got our arrival runway, and we've got our standard arrival route as well. So it's all there for us to use. Nice, straightforward, and simple. We've also got Navigraph charts keyed in. In fact, that is a very good point, because this has to be signed in every time we do this, which is a little bit of a pain. Let me just sign in so these charts work. So if you don't have Navigraph charts, don't worry too much about that. I'm just typing this in a separate browser. If I could spell. There we go. So I just need to pop that code into my my account. What is it? X-ray Delta Golf Bravo 9 Yankee X-ray Victor. So that should come alive in a moment. There we go. And as you can see, I've already gone ahead and at the bottom, if you're familiar with Navigraph, I've already gone ahead and pinned in all the charts that we are going to be using. So here's the aerodrome chart. So we're parked just here at Pier B. If I zoom in a little further, we can see that. Stand 10, and our departure runway is 05 left, which is this runway just here. So we're going to taxi out all the way down here on Alpha to runway 05 left, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So now that's all set and set and done. Let's have a look at firing the aircraft up. Is Gatwick using it right at the moment? Oh well, never mind. I'm not going to go through changing approaches just at the moment. Right, I do need to get set up. So let's go to the ground page on the electronic flyback. Call the external power button, and then the ground power unit should come along. Once the ground power unit is coming along and getting hooked up, we're then able to connect and turn on the external power. So let's go and turn on the batteries. So we're going to put on battery 1 and battery number 2. Done, no problem, mate. You'll be able to watch this back at your leisure once the stream has finished. So batteries 1 and 2 are now turned on. We're going to now connect the external power. As we do that, we hear all the relays running around and firing up. You can hear the fan as well. So whilst it's doing that, we can then go through our flows, which start on the bottom left hand side here, go all the way to the top, and then in the center again all the way up to the top. One thing we're going to do just before that is we're going to look at our fuel, as we need to get some fuel loaded for this flight. Now, you've probably become accustomed to the fact that every time we fly and set off in the simulator, we've always got around 9.5 tons of fuel on board. Well, that's quite a lot for this short flight. So we're actually going to defuel the aircraft, but by how much? So if we select the operational flight plan, let's just zoom in a little bit and scroll down a little bit. What we want to have a look at is this figure just here, the plan block fuel, and that's saying that we need 4.3 tons or 4,329 kilograms of fuel to be able to safely get to our destination, and that includes a couple of other things. So you've got 200 kilograms to be used in the taxi. It's saying about just under 1.8 tons for the actual trip. It then has a contingency, so a little bit of spare fuel of 180 kilograms, which gives an extra 5 minutes flying time. We then have fuel that will get us to our alternate airport should we have to divert, and as you can see, the alternate tonight is London Stansted, and then a final reserve as well. So we're just for this tutorial flight tonight, we're going to load in as close to this as we can. Now, in the real world, what we would normally do is have a look at the weather, which we can scroll down and have a look just to see if any bad weather is potentially going to cause us problems at London Gatwick. Now, pre-COVID, of course, you could also take things like having to enter holding patterns. Obviously, Gatwick, very, very busy airport, so you may want to load a little bit of extra fuel for if you need to hold. But if we do look at the METAR, we can see winds are 190 at 5, but ceiling and visibility is okay. So from a weather standpoint of view, there doesn't look to be too much going on there. It does say though, temporarily, that it could matter. That is actually from midnight here in the UK or thereabouts. It does say visibility is going to drop, and then in the morning looks like it could be quite misty, but we're not going to be flying into Gatwick at that point. But say if we were setting off from New York, then we'll be coming in, arriving at this sort of time. You'd need to take that into account. So let's just come back up and have a look at that again. So planned bulk fuel is 4,329. We're now going to go to the fuel page. So around 4.4 tons of fuel. And it's always a little bit difficult to use that slider, but that is close enough. So 4381. We can also set that to real time as well. So you could do it instantly. I'm going to set that to real time. So it should take about 7 minutes. That's fine. We're still going to be here in 7 minutes. So let's set that going. So as you can see, we are now defueling. Okay. Well, let's get on with doing our flows then. So as I said, we're going to start on the bottom left just here, and we're going to work our way up. So the crew oxygen supply, turn that on. We're going to turn on the ground control for the cockpit voice recorder, and we're going to do the cockpit voice recorder test. So we just press and hold this until we hear the click. There we go. We're going to continue to come up, and then we're going to get the idiots aligned. We're going to turn these to nav, and we're going to do it in the order of 1, 2, 3, which, if you've not spotted before, it's not done from left to right. It is done in numerical order. Oops. So there we go. Nav, nav, and then 3. We're going to come down to the center then of the overhead panel. We're going to turn on our navigation and logo lights. We would then normally turn on seatbelt signs and no smoking signs. I'm going to leave the seatbelt signs off because we normally wait until fueling is completed, or defueling in this case, before turning the seatbelt signs on. So I'm going to pop seatbelt signs on. The emergency lights are now armed, and we're going to do the engine 1, engine 2 fire test. And if you haven't seen this before, you can see on the eCam screen that it does bring up the information on here. So if we do the engine 1 fire test, there we go, and engine 2 and APU, there we go. And I don't know if you'll have heard it, there will have been 3 clicks, 3 little bips that you wait for until you can complete the engine fire test. HD, yeah, we should really diffuse the plane to around 2.5 tons, because that's much more realistic fuel to arrive at an airport with. I wonder if there's a way of actually setting that in the config file. I know FlyByWire haven't done it. I'm not brave enough to go ahead and start messing with things like that. Okay, so the overhead panel is now done. It's usually at this point that I try to add a little bit of realism into my flights, and I use self-loading cargo for that. So I'm going to just let self-loading cargo start boarding our passengers, and it also gives us a little bit of nice background music as well, which I'm sure you're all fed up of hearing if you watch this channel regularly. But we're ready for boarding, so we'll tell them to crack on. Cabin crew, refueling is underway and the bags are starting to get loaded, so let's open the doors and allow our passengers on board. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, and we can now use this great little Pushback app for the toolbar Pushback helper, and I'm going to use that to open the forward doors. I don't think, have we got any stairs there? Oh, we do have stairs. So if I bring the stairs to us, we can also bring catering and baggage, and I believe that will open the doors as well. When you bring the stairs, the doors are automatically opened, and you can now hear the passengers starting to board as well. So let's close that for now, don't need that. Okay, so what else do we need to know? If we go back to our dashboard and the METAR, one of the things I should probably have got right at the start, but we can get it now, is the QNH here in Manchester, which is 1013. And we're now going to go ahead and set that up. So we look at the center instrument panel to begin with. Let's just turn the brightness up. 1013, just because that is the default, same as the standard pressure. We want to check that the clock is correct. Obviously we know it's not because I've rolled the time back at the moment, and then we want to make sure the anti-skid is turned on. We're going to come down to the pedestal next, and then things that we're going to check on the pedestal, things like VHF 1 selected, and then if we're going for ultra realism on VHF 2, we want the guard frequency 121.5. Make sure we set that back to VHF 1, and then we want to make sure that none of the switching panel is turned, so we want to make sure that they are all centered. If they're not, you'll get a warning on the eCam, or not so much a warning but information showing there. And then make sure we just pop that back. What we then want to do is make sure that the thrust levers are at idle and not somewhere like here. We want to make sure that they're down at idle. We want to make sure the engine masters are off and engine mode select is normal. Parking brake, of course, I want to make sure the parking brake is on. Then we're going to come to the transponder, and sometimes when you load in, and I don't know why it does this, but sometimes when you load in you'll see the transponder is turned to on, or as you can see here it's actually turned off. I've just moved the flaps lever, let's put that back. So the correct position for the start of the flight is, let me just see if I can find the right viewpoint, here we go. So it should be on standby, and this should be on. Now I don't believe that this switch here should actually twist like that. It should only have two positions, on and off. So there it is, that's set. If you're not flying with VATSIM or anything like that, you can leave the squawk code as is, or you can make your own up, I don't know. pick a squawk code. So that's all set. We're now going to come up to the glare shield then. So the glare shield, we're going to make sure we set the same QNH. Let's just turn the brightness up here. So the QNH is 1013. We're then going to put the flight directors on as well. So flight directors 1 and flight directors 2. Have those stairs just disappeared? Yes, I thought they had. And as you can see, the main door is closed, which makes it rather impossible for the passengers to get on board, doesn't it? So let's just open that forward door again. There we go. Passengers carry on boarding. We also want to make sure that this is in arc mode, certainly for takeoff, and we can just change the view to around 20 miles out as well. It just makes it a lot easier to see the map when we start checking things out and make sure that the route we've put in is correct. Next we're going to come down and set up our main instrument panel. So let's just turn the brightness up of the primary flight display, then the navigation display. We can do the two ECAMs, the upper and the lower, and after that we can also turn up the first officer displays. Now normally, just to save on frame rates, I actually turn these off, so if we turn those off you do claim back a few extra frame rates, so it is it's definitely worth doing. So the IRS alignment is in 3 minutes, and we can also do a systems check. Press the systems button, be sure to clear that once we've done it to show. HD EVIS needs to be on 10 or 20 nautical miles. Why? That is for predictive wind shear, I believe. That may be a bit too much information that I was going for in this tutorial, but fair enough. We always love being quizzed by HD. I'm going to let other people answer his questions this flight, I think. Right, so instrument panel is now all set up. So here comes the fun part. This is where, if you guys want to fly the same route as I'm going to do, this is what I need you to do. So Control 5 gets us to the McDo, and then what I want you to do, if you want to fly the exact same route as me and be able to import it nice and easy, I want you to go to the McDo menu and then go to Options. If you then go to SIDS, oh no, it's not SIDS, it's in AOC, sorry. Go to AOC and then select SimBrief. Then if you pop in this username or pilot ID, the username is Easyjetsimpilot, or of course you can just copy that ID down. I'll leave that on screen just for a minute or so. Copy that down. That means that in a second you'll be able to import the same flight plan routing that I am about to do. So that will just make it really easy for anybody following that through. Of course, this flight plan will only be active until the next time I create a flight plan in the simulator. So you've probably got a few hours of doing that. If not, you would have to pop that in manually using the operational flight plan that I have popped into the chat. Okay, so now you guys have all got the same flight plan as me. What I need you to do then is go back to the McDo menu. We're then going to go to the ATSU, and this is where we're going to get the information from SimBrief and put it into Microsoft Flight Simulator. This doesn't put it into the aircraft, this will just put it into Microsoft Flight Simulator for now. So we're now going to go to the AOC menu and to Init Press. And here, if we now press Init Data Request, we should get the information shown to us. And as you can see, there we go, we've got departing Manchester, arriving at Gatwick, 50 minutes flight, 49, and 4.4 tons of fuel loaded. If you're still fueling or defueling, then these figures will change, so don't worry too much about that. So the next thing we're going to do is go back a page to the OAC menu. GPS primary is shown, it just shows us that the ideas have now finished aligning. We can clear that. And now, if we go to the performance weights and balance page, this is where we're going to check a couple of things. Now, the block fuel we can ignore. We don't need to touch the fuel just here because it's been loaded now through the FlyPad. What we are going to do is go on to page number 2. So there we go, 2 of 2. And we're going to check that the operational flight plan figures match up with what we have here. So payload is 18,200 or 18,200. And if I just zoom in, we'll see that matches up. There it is. The zero fuel weight then is 59.2. 59.2. And then the zero fuel weight centre of gravity, we can leave that at 30, but if you do as well, make sure that on this weights page we just move that up to around the 30 mark as well, so they match up. There is a little bit of discrepancy here because this is an empty CG position, so that is absolutely nothing on the aircraft. No fuel, no passengers, no luggage. Whereas the figure that you're putting in here is the zero fuel weight centre of gravity, so there's everything, all the passengers, all the luggage, the pilots, the crew, everything except the fuel. So the two don't need to match up exactly. But if you use a figure of around 30 here in the sim, that's absolutely fine. So once that's all checked and set, then we need to hit this payload button. Once we've done that, we'll see that the gross weight of the aircraft is now showing to be 63.5 tons. And if we go back to the FlyPad, we'll see our takeoff weight is showing to be 63, or just under 63.5 tons, isn't it? 63.3 if we round that down. 63.3 tons. And that's okay because we're probably going to burn off a couple of hundred tons or so on the taxi to the runway. So that works out. That works out well, and we know that all those figures are correct. In order for that to work, you do need to have an accurate profile for use in SimBrief, and that is available to download on the Discord server in the pilot's briefing room. So if you're not yet on our Discord, please do join that, and I'll pop the link to that as well. I think it's also in the video description if you wish to join that. Okay, so that is setting up everything from SimBrief. Now we have to actually go in and set up the aircraft itself. So we start by going to the data page, and we want to, whilst we're here, we can check that the IRSs have aligned. There we go, we've got 3 navs showing green, and then we can go back and check the aircraft status. So we're basically here just checking that we've got the right engines. We've got the LEAP engines for the A320neo, and we've got a valid AIRAC cycle. And that is in date. If it wasn't in date, there's not really much you can do about it unless you have a Navigraph subscription, just because these are the little updates that sometimes we get from Microsoft, usually once a month. Okay, so that's all sorted. The next thing we're going to do is go to the init page. So now the init page, all we have to do, now we've already brought that information in from SimBrief into Microsoft Flight Simulator, is press init request. This should then populate a lot of these fields. So as you can see, we're going from Manchester, London Gatwick. The alternate is Stansted. Our flight number, which we can actually change if you wish, so we can change that to the call sign, is 34 Alpha Mike, and then that is what will be sent to the air traffic controllers on their radar screen. And then a cost index of 8. Now the flight level here is showing flight level 190. If we come back over to the operational flight plan, that is because here it's got a cruise level of flight level 190. Well, that is exceptionally low. I don't think we'll be flying at that, to be honest with you. I'm just going to double check. Do we climb any higher than flight level 190? It is a short flight, but I did expect to get a little bit higher than that. We could probably set that to flight level 240. just because it's a short flight. Even on short flights, aircraft it's much more fuel efficient to go all the way up, spend maybe a couple of minutes at the top of the climb, and then come all the way back down again. So I am going to actually change that a little bit, and if anything, all it should do is make us a little bit more fuel efficient. So let's go ahead, let's just set a flight level of 240 if we want to change that. The cost index is also brought in there for us automatically as well. So if we set flight level 240, we don't need to edit the temperature, that's going to be done automatically for us. We can also check the tropopause height, and that is shown on at the start. So the tropo here is 40,000, about 41,000 feet, and to be fair, there's not much in it, so for a simulator point of view, that's pretty spot on. Okay, so that's the init A page done. The next thing we're going to do then is have a look at our flight plan. So we know we're departing now from Manchester, runway 05 left, and it's the Listo 2 Sierra. If you need to double check, you should have it just here. So 05 left, Listo 2 Sierra, and insert. The other end then, we're coming on to runway 26 left, and then we will be using the Kidlig 1 Golf arrival. So let's set that ILS 26 left, and then we'll just scroll down for the Kidlig 1 Golf arrival. So which is the initial approach fix? Let's have a quick look. Let's bring up these charts, which is quite nice now we've got these in the simulator. So this is the approach that begins here at Kidlig, comes all the way down to Midhurst, Holly and Willow, and at this point here you can see that that's a great place for the standard arrival route to finish, because you're just south of the airfield. You've got then two options. You can either be brought back around to land on runway 08, or you can go, if I move on to the next chart at Mayfield, we can then be brought in from here to Mayfield to bring ourselves in and around and line up on the ILS for runway 26. So Mayfield is the VIA, or the initial approach that we're going to be using. So we can leave that set to Mayfield and insert that. And now what we're going to do is go back to the flight plan and have a look at the distance. So 209 miles shown there, and on the operational flight plan, what have we got? We've got 213 miles. So 4 miles difference, that's nothing really. Quite happy with that. So now we're going to come on to the RadNav page, and this is where we will put in any VORs or anything like that that we'd need to fly the departure. As it's an RNAV departure, we shouldn't need to do anything, shouldn't need anything like that, but for situational awareness we could put the VOR at Manchester in, just so if we did have a problem with our departure, then we've got a distance from the airfield to help get us back there. So Mike Charlie Tango is the identifier for the Manchester VOR, so you can just pop that in there, and as you can see we're 0 miles away from that. There are 2 more in the world apparently, identified by the code Mike Charlie Tango. Obviously you want the one closest to you. That's not always the case, I just know that because we're sat here on the ground at Manchester, so that's how we know that. But the real way to make sure would be to check the frequencies, and I also know that 113.55 is the Manchester VOR. So that's now put in, but realistically we're not going to be using that for our departure. So now we're going to come to the init B page. So that's back to the init page, and then if we scroll over, this is where we do all our fuel calculations. So the zero fuel weight and the zero fuel weight center of gravity, great little neat trick here in the simulator is we can just press this button here, and that comes up with the zero fuel weight and the zero fuel weight center of gravity. So as you can see, this is actually calculated from the aircraft and the flight simulator itself, and these two don't match, so there is a difference between the empty centre of gravity position, so with nothing on the aircraft at all, no fuel, passengers, luggage, etc., and the zero fuel weight, everything but the fuel centre of gravity. So we can use that to calculate this. Pop that in there. We're now going to check out the trip wind. So it's only a short flight, so it won't make too much difference, but we do have a headwind of 11 for this this flight, so I have to put that in, H11. Of course, if it was a tailwind, we'd put in T11. So that's all done, and we know that we have got, what was it, 4.3 tons of 4.3 tons of fuel now loaded, close to 4.4. But let's go and press the fuel planning, and this is where the aircraft tells you how much fuel it thinks it needs to complete the journey, and the flight plan with everything that you've put in, including all the SIDS and stars, etc. So we're going to put that, and it tells us we need 4.8. Well, good for us, we've got plenty of extra for diversions and holding, things like that. So we're going to put in 4.3 and pop that in there. Then we need to give it a second, and you can see it's already calculated our takeoff weight now to be 63.4. I would expect that to be exactly matched up with the operational flight plan, because we didn't load any extra fuel. We loaded exactly the same amount of fuel that was shown on the operational flight plan. So if I nip back over here, takeoff weight is 63.3, 63.4. Yeah, so it's just rounded up, and that's fine. Round the weight up for calculating when we depart. Now, the other thing we need to do is have a look at how much fuel it would take to get to our alternate, because this is never usually correct. So it's got an alternate of 300 kilograms, so it's going to take us a little bit more to get there from London Gatwick. Say we'd gone in for an arrival at London Gatwick, maybe gone in a second time, and then decided actually no, we're not going to get in for whatever reason, so Stansted it is. In which case we come back over to the operational flight plan and check. It says it's going to need just over 1.2. So for safety, we'll pop in 1.3. So now the computer works out that if we're going to use 1.3 tons of fuel that we have loaded to get to Stansted, we have got an extra 17 minutes of fuel on board. 17 minutes flying time of fuel on board. Okay, that's the init B page setup. The last thing then we need to do, oh, actually one thing, now that all the fuel is loaded in, to close the refueling page, you can see refueling pad is still open. So in order to get rid of that, go to the fuel page, and as soon as you've done that, that changes to completed, and that should have disappeared. Now that's done, we can turn on the seatbelt signs, and we can turn the fuel pumps on. We can then also start the APU, as we're pretty close to getting ready for our pushback. So let's turn on the master, and then we should wait 3 seconds before pressing the start button. That'll do. So the APU is now starting up, and if we look here on the lower ECAM, you'll see the APU is firing up. So whilst that's doing that, let's come to our performance page, the last page we need to set up. So this is where we need to refer to the charts. If you have them, it's great. If not, of course, then don't worry too much about that. But if I bring the charts up here for Manchester, one of the things I'm going to be checking is the transitional altitude for our departure, which is normally shown here. As you can see, transition altitude is 5,000 feet. So let's pop that in. And then we've got the thrust reduction and acceleration altitude. Well, most of the flights that I do here in Europe, the thrust reduction and acceleration is going to be the same. I do plan on doing a more detailed tutorial about this, and it's all to do with noise abatement. So at 1,000 feet above the aerodrome level, as you can see, if we just go to the chart here, you can see the airport elevation is close to 260 feet. Now, a lot of airlines use 1,500 feet above this elevation level for their departure. The SOPs I use just use 1,000 feet. So we could actually go in and edit that ever so slightly because they don't quite match up. So to get 1,000 feet above this, you do round it up to the nearest whole number. So let's go to 1260. And same for the acceleration, 1260, and that is the altitude that you're going to see thrust climb for your thrust lever set, and that's well, we'll see that flashing on the FMA. So we'll see that now when we pass 1,260 feet. We also want to make sure the engine out acceleration is also the same as this figure just here, the normal acceleration. So let's change that as well, 1260. There it is. I'm just going to close that down for now. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do then is go flaps 1. And the only time you wouldn't use flaps 1 is if you were on a particularly short runway, or the runway was really contaminated with rain, slush, snow, etc. It's all dependent on the takeoff distances that you would normally be able to calculate on the airline's tablet or whatever program it is they use. And that is coming. FlyByWire are planning on putting something like that onto the FlyPad. So when that comes along, I'll be able to do a better tutorial and explain that in a bit more detail. But until then, always flaps 1, and without any way of calculating flex temp at the moment, as sadly the website I used to use has now gone down, we will use Toga. So it's we're not going to put any flex takeoff temperature into there. We'll leave that blank, as we're going to be using Toga for that. So let's calculate these V speeds. So working from V2 backwards, if we click it once, we get the figure computed by the aircraft, 135. Rotate is 131 and 130. So click it once to calculate it, click it again to enter it. And that's it. Everything is now entered, and we're ready to start pushing back and getting ready. So I think all our passengers are now on board. Let's close the doors. And we'll have a look at briefing our taxi.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board our Easyjet service. Please place your large bags into the overhead locker, wheels first, and keep your small items under the seat in front of you. These include laptops, handbags, duty-free and loose items of clothing. Once you have safely stowed your cabin bag, please take your seat. To help us ensure a prompt departure, we would kindly ask that you keep the aisle clear, enabling all remaining customers to board. Your seatbelt can now be fastened ready for departure. This is a no smoking service. Thank you for observing this policy.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, so now we're just going to come and have a look at flying the actual departure. So order said we're parked at stand 10 and quickly briefed. We're going to push back, face south, and then taxi down via Lima, and then on to, in fact we could take Lima, Charlie, Alpha, couldn't we follow that all the way down, or depending what air traffic control wanted you to do, Lima onto Papa and then onto Bravo. But essentially we're taxiing out to runway 05 left down here. A couple of other things we need to do then. So with our departure, we want to know what altitude are we going to pop onto the into the autopilot, the flight control unit. And as you can see, the initial climb clearance is up to 5,000 feet. We don't go above 5,000 feet at this airport until instructed to by air traffic control. So fair enough, let's close that down. 5,000 feet actually is already set, and we also want to make sure that this is in managed mode as well. Remember, the easiest way to remember how you're controlling the autopilot is if you push the buttons on the flight control unit, you are pushing control to the aircraft and putting it into managed mode. It is going to determine the best speed, it is going to follow the route that you have selected, and it is going to determine the best rate of climb or descent. If VNAV was working, it is not yet, but we can leave it in managed mode for our departure. Just the opposite is true. If you wanted to select the heading, if you wanted to select the speed, you would pull back control, and then you're free to select the heading that you want to go to, or indeed the speed. But I'm not going to push those again because I want the aircraft to manage that on our departure. So there we go. Okay, so then let's get ready to push back. One final paranoia check we can do is if we turn this to plan mode and we just zoom in a little bit more, we can check that that departure looks like it should do on our charts. And again, if you have the Navigraph charts, it's great to be able to check this. We can also turn on the constraints, and you can see 5,000 feet is also showing at Listo. So that departure looks good, but what about the arrival? Well, let's zoom down and have a look. So if we go to our flight plan page, and if we scroll through, we can scroll all the way down to London Gatwick, and that's exactly how we briefed it. And it's worth having a look at this now because the flight is so short. Then it's definitely worth looking at it now on the ground. Let me just bring those charts back up again. So there you can see the Midhurst VOR, which is just here. From Midhurst it's then Tuffos down to Holly. From Holly we're then going up to Mayfield, which is just here, and then up and around to intercept the ILS, and that looks pretty good, and I'm happy with how that's coded in. So we now need to set that back to either 10 or 20 miles, but certainly back into arc mode as well. Alright, let's get ready to push back using the new pushback mod. Final things to do: we need to disconnect the external power. We can also turn on the APU bleed. That's now gone. The aircraft is running under its own power. We're now just going to run part of the before start checklist, and if anyone wants to get a copy of the checklists which I use, which are very close to real world ones, then please do join our Discord server, and they are all available for you on there. So the before start checklist. Cockpit preparation is all completed. The signs are on. Adheres are aligned, and we've checked we've got 3 nav green. Fuel quantity is checked, loaded and balanced, as we can see there. Always remember to turn these screens back off once you've checked them. The flight management guidance system is all set, and the altimeter is 1013. Last paranoia check for that. Of course, if it did change whilst you were on air traffic control frequency, they would usually let you know. So just go back to the dashboard, 1013. There we go. So all happy with that. We're going to we'd then contact ATC, get our pushback clearance. ATC will give us our pushback clearance. We turn on the rotating beacon lights before beginning the start sequence. Go to our pushback, press the start pushback, and then the tug should start to move. Once he does that, we also want to check that the nose wheel steering is disconnected. We're then going to come down, turn the transponder to auto. There it is. And now we can start letting the tug driver earn his money whilst we start the engines. To start the engines, we're going to go to ignition, and if we just zoom in a little bit here, you can see what we're doing. So we're starting the engine master switch will be turned to ignition, and then we're going to start engine 1. Always make sure that APU bleed is turned on, because you can't start the engines without this.
Cabin crew, we're all ready to go, so please arm the doors and cross-check. Thank you.
So let's release the parking brakes.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck this morning, let me welcome you
And back we go.
this Easyjet aircraft as you settle in for what we hope is going to be a most enjoyable flight. The weather today doesn't look to be posing much of a problem, so we should have a nice smooth ride for you throughout the duration of the flight. And as the cabin crew continue making their last preparations, if you could please assist them by getting
So locking the flight deck door, engine mode selected to ignition, and starting engine
The
1.
ground crew have now finished loading the aircraft, and we're just about finished with all our pre-flight checks, so it won't be long until we are pushing back. If you could please give the cabin crew your full attention as they go through the safety briefing, we'd very much appreciate it. So on behalf of myself and the first officer, we'd like to say thank you for choosing Easyjet today, and we look forward to giving you a safe flight.
Blue, the only way you can do that here in the simulator at the moment is to actually change the init B page from 2, and then you'd have to put in a whole other flight plan. It's not so easy at the moment. So we're waiting for that to say available. So engine 1 is now available. Now we can start engine 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now ask for your attention while we take you through the safety procedures on this aircraft. A safety card is in your seat pocket, showing the exit routes, oxygen masks, life jackets, and brace position that you must adopt if you hear brace, brace. There are 2 emergency exits at the rear, 4 in the middle, and 2 at the front of the cabin. Floor lighting will guide you to an exit. Please be aware that your nearest exit may be behind you. In an emergency, leave all cabin baggage on board. Your seatbelt is fastened, adjusted, and released as shown. It must be fastened when the seatbelt signs are on, and we recommend that you keep it fastened at all times. If the air supply fails, masks will drop from above you. Pull a mask towards you to start the oxygen. Put the mask over your nose and mouth. Hold in place with the strap. Pull on each side to adjust. Put on your own mask before helping others.
So once we've ended the
If we land on
pushback,
water,
be sure to
take
set the
life
parking
jacket
brakes.
from under your seat. Put it over your head. Pass the tapes around your waist. Click together and pull the strap to adjust. Do not
And
inflate
off the
it
truck driver
inside
goes.
the aircraft. When outside,
Engine
inflate
number
by
2
pulling the
has
throttle.
now
If it
stabilised.
fails to
So
inflate or needs topping up, blow into the tube. There is a light and whistle.
we're going to
for
put the
attraction.
engine start switch
We
back
also
to
carry
norm.
flotation aids for children. Your tray table must now be stowed.
Come up
armrests
to the
down,
overhead.
window
We can
blinds
turn off the
open,
APU
and
bleed,
seat
and we
belts
can turn off
fastened.
the APU masters.
We
If
wish
it was
you a
cold,
pleasant
we'd
trip
also look
with
at putting
Easyjet.
anti-ice on if we had low-level cloud. But today we don't. Well, we do have low-level cloud, but it's quite warm. It's 21 degrees, so don't need to concern ourselves with that. And then we are going to arm our spoilers by lifting the spoiler stick up. We're going to reset the rudder to make sure that's always displaying 0. We're going to go flaps 1, and then we're going to set our trim. So in order to do that, what we're looking at is these figures down here. If I just zoom in, we can see CFG 30, 25, 20, 17, etc. And we can see the little white arrow just there. So we want to set this to the aircraft's centre of gravity. And to find that, if we go to the weights page, and it's shown just here, centre of gravity is 32.2 as it is just there. So we then close that down, and we're going to wind that up to, and you have to make a bit of an educated guess. So between 30 and 35, a bit closer to 30, 32.2, and that's normally where we'd pop that. So now that's done, we're going to do our after start checklist. So anti-ice is not required, ECAM status is all checked, system's normal, and the pitch trim, as we've just confirmed, 32.2, and we've already checked that the rudder is set. Okay, now the pushback tug, he's clear and gone. We get our taxi clearance from air traffic control. Once he told us where we were going, turn on the taxi light, and off we go. One thing I should have done as we started the pushback is start the timer running just here. So, but again, perhaps slightly a bit too in-depth for the tutorial this evening. Let's do our flight control check as well. So, moving the stick, full left, full right, neutral, full up, full down, neutral, and then the rudder, full right, full left, neutral, and off we go. So as we're taxiing down here, maybe just get ourselves back on that that taxi line. So we're now away from the ground crew. We can turn on the weather radar and predictive wind shear. We can also check auto brake max, although we do have to we will have to double check that, because I think someone in the chat was a bit ago was just saying that has been fixed, but auto brake max should now stay engaged until takeoff. Sadly, whenever you do a brake check, so if I just press the brakes there, at the moment in the version I've got, it is getting knocked off, but we'll just keep that re-engaged for the time being. Okay, so taxiing down to our departure runway, 05 left. Other things we can do, if it's an airfield with terrain near it, we can turn the terrain radar on. So turn that on just there. We do have the pennines to watch out for on our departure today. And we also want to do a final check, make sure QNH hasn't changed. So part of our final briefing. So the QNH hasn't changed, still 1013. We'd then do an engine out procedure check, which basically, if you had a problem on takeoff, if you lost an engine after you'd passed V1, so you were committed to takeoff, what would you do? I would personally, these are normally given to you by the airlines, and there are strict policies. Every airline does it perhaps slightly differently, but what we would do is we would follow this standard instrument departure just until we were safe, and then we'd return back to the Mike Charlie Tango VOR over the airfield and hold until we decided what it was we were going to do. The departure matches what we got on the FMGC, and our stop altitude is set to 5,000 feet as per the charts. So we can go to the overhead, ding the cabin. We can also turn off the ground control. That doesn't need to be on after the engines are running. Okay, so other things then to be aware of. Let's run the before start checklist. Sorry, before takeoff checklist. So the flight controls we've checked. We've done our briefing for the departure. Flap setting is config 1. The FMA and takeoff data is 130 blue, 135 magenta, climb nav blue, 5,000 feet blue, and flight directors 1 and 2 are both turned on, and it's a toga takeoff. Realistically, we didn't need to go right to the end of this runway. We could have taken off from one of the taxiway intersections, particularly as we're doing a toga takeoff, but never mind. So we're just going to hold here, and then air traffic control, once ready, would give you the information and clearance to line up. So we're going to check our brake temperatures, make sure they're not over 300 degrees C. That's okay. The takeoff and approach clearance looks good. We know with no other aircraft in the sim today, so that's fine. Let's get the lights on. So strobe lights on, runway turn off lights, landing lights, and nose lights. We can turn the packs off, so pack 1 and pack 2, that's the air conditioning off for the time being. We're then going to come down, we're going to turn on the transponder to on, we're then going to turn TCAS on, TARA, and make sure it's showing tilt above. There it is. And now we can go ahead and line up. Yeah, HD, wasn't paying too much attention to to that. I've just infringed the ILS area. Never mind. I'm on my own in the sim. I'll let you do the paperwork. Okay, so now we're going to run the before takeoff checklist below the line. So cabin is secured for takeoff, as we can see down here. Engine mode selector is still normal. TCAS is TARA, packs are turned off, anti-ice is off and not required. So now we're going to line up using as much of the runway as we can. Okay, so now we are all safely lined up. We're going to do the TO config test again because the auto brake keeps knocking off. So auto brake max, TO config, and we're ready. So what's going to happen then on departure? Very quickly talk through the takeoff roll. We are going to announce the takeoff. We're going to start the chronometer or the timer, to give it its Yorkshire use phrase. We're going to set the thrust power to 50% N1 as shown by the 5 just there. After those are showing stabilized around 50%, we can then advance the thrust levers to toga. We're going to make sure the side stick is about halfway forward as displayed down here, and then between 80 and 100 knots, certainly by 100 knots, we want to make sure that is back centered again in the neutral position. Once we pass V1, we're going to start the takeoff, and we are going to pitch up to roughly between 15 and 17.5 degrees. Not too quickly. Normally takes around 5 seconds to get a nice good rotation up to that attitude, and then once we are on our way, then at around 1,200 feet, we're going to show the climb thrust is going to be flashing just here. As we do that, we're going to lower the nose slightly and pull the thrust levers back to the climb detent. We're also going to follow the directions given to us on the flight directors, which is not shown just yet. You'll see the green crossbars appear as we begin our takeoff roll. So let's go. Side stick forward, takeoff, start the chrono, 50% N1 power, there we go, and toga. So showing man toga, SRS. Try and hold that center line using the rudder, bringing the side stick back to neutral for 100 knots.
100 knots, check.
And we're now passing V1. Rotate. Nav is now showing, so the aircraft knows it can now fly the navigation line that we have programmed. And we can follow the flight directors, so right hand turn, keep those centered. Lever climb is showing, so we're going to lower that nose again, follow the flight directors, and now we're going to set climb thrust, which is now shown just here, thrust climb. Again, follow those flight directors, try and keep it centered. And what we can do now is engage autopilot 1. So autopilot is now flying the aircraft. We're going to turn those packs back on, 1 and 2. Realistically, you should leave 10 seconds between the two, but a little bit difficult in the sim sometimes. We've now passed S speed, so let's configure the aircraft and clean it up. So flaps 0, ground spoilers, we'll disarm those. And with no air traffic control on line, we can give ourselves a higher clearance. So let's set a flight level now of I don't know, maybe 150. So let's set flight level 150, which is above transition altitude. So we're going to set standard pressure, and as you can now see, we've got flight level 150 shown in blue, and we're away. Just turn the brightness down on that primary flight display a little bit. So we can now turn the terrain radar off, and we should have the weather radar showing, which now only shows precipitation as it should do, so that's nice. Release the cabin crew, which just to pretend and do that, I flick the no smoking signs.
Ladies and gentlemen, please keep your seatbelt fastened while the seatbelt sign is on. We recommend that you keep your seatbelt fastened whenever you are seated. Toilets are located at each end of the cabin. Remember that smoking is not permitted at any time. This includes e-cigarettes.
So passing 10,000 feet, we're going to get the lights off. We're going to select airport on the EFIS. Going to clear the RadNav page, and then go to our performance page, progress page, and we can see flight level 240. Just check that it's not, of course, above the recommended maximum, which for a flight like this it most certainly won't be. So we can go ahead and select flight level 240. And you don't need to push it or pull it, anything like that. As long as it is showing here, flight level 240 blue, then all is good. All we need to do now is keep an eye on the instruments, make sure the aircraft behaves. And we're not showing any major turbulence on the flight radar, so I'm happy to turn the seatbelt signs off.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has now turned off the seatbelt sign and you are now free to move around the cabin. We do recommend, however, when in your seat, that you keep your seatbelt fastened at all times in case of unexpected turbulence. The toilets are now available. Please contact a member of the cabin crew if you require assistance. Thank you.
As our temperature is starting to drop and we are in the cloud layer, let's get the anti-ice on. And if you do forget to do that, then if there is any ice build-up, the upper ECAM just here will ping with a nice ice warning. So we certainly won't be at the cruise altitude for too long. So how are we going to do our arrival? Sounds daft, we've only been airborne for 6 minutes, but we're already approaching Birmingham. You can see Birmingham Airport just there. And if we bring those charts back out, you'll see if we go to our star, which is our arrival chart, then we'll get some information on what altitudes we need to be at when. So as you can see, at Disset we need to be at flight level 200, at Kidley 150, then if we were heading to Willow we'd need to be at flight level 70. Let's just have a quick look. Does this actually show us any altitudes? Oh, we've just broke through the clouds. Will probably show us a holding altitude at 4,000 feet at so 4,000 feet at Mayfield. HD, best speed for turbulence. Oh, this low level, is it 260 knots? And then above, is it above flight level 240, Mach 0.76? Testing my brain this evening. So the first constraint we need to be aware of is this one, Kidley. Sorry, no it's not, it's Dissit, just there. And if you want to know how far we are away from that particular waypoint, we can pop this into the progress distance bearing 2 page. Let's just type that in. And we're 41 miles away. HD, thank you. Here's the above flight level 200. I missed that one, didn't I? 280 knots.
In just a few moments, we'll commence our in-flight service, offering you the chance to purchase a selection of hot beverages, together with drinks and snacks from the bar. We accept payment in pounds, euros, most major currencies, and debit or credit cards. The correct change would be greatly appreciated, and if we can be of any further assistance, then just ask us as we join you in the cabin shortly.
So now we're showing speed and alt star as we come towards our cruising altitude of flight level 240. Alt star, the star means it's basically capturing whatever it is that it's displaying up here. So at the moment it's capturing that altitude. In a moment that should go to alt cruise. There we go, alt cruise. And that's it. So if I just clear off the airports on there, just zoom out a little bit, there we can see Kidley. So we're going to start descending rather soon, which seems a little crazy, doesn't it? But it is more fuel efficient. Now, had we got more time in the actual cruise, we would do a host of things now. So we would do a fuel check, make sure that the fuel that we've got here coming up at Honolulu matches what we've got on here, with a few exceptions if you've added extra fuel and things. So very quickly let's have a look. So Honolulu, we should have about 3 tons of fuel. We're going to have 3.3 tons of fuel, so that's 300 kilograms extra. Where did that come from? Let's check. So contingency, 180 kilograms extra, so it's essentially burnt 120 kilograms less in the climb than we'd planned for, which is fine, which is good. Now this is where VNAV, when it does come, is going to be really useful because of the constraints that we've got on there. If I turn that on, actually it's not showing that constraint there at Kidley, but what it would do is you would then set the constraint at Kidley, were it there, which is flight level 200. We could then scroll that back to flight level 200 and engage manage mode, and the aircraft would then ensure that we were at flight level 200 by Kidley. Sadly, that doesn't yet work in Flight Simulator, but it will. It will do. So things we need to check, and this is why it's always good to have 2 pilots flying. We're a little bit rushed at the moment given the short nature of this flight. So we are going to land on runway 26 left on the Kidley 1 Golf arrival. and let's just have a look here. The transition altitude for our approach is 6,000 feet. The platform altitude on our approach, the lowest altitude we can descend to before capturing the ILS, is 2,000 feet. And with the weather quite nice at Gatwick at the moment, it's just going to be a normal Cat 1 ILS. So in the Barrow field, we're going to enter 396. So that's the decision altitude. We need to get the weather as well, so as you can see, this is telling us to enter our destination data. We can do it the cool way, which is requesting it here in the McDo, so quick weather request. Once we've got that, we then go to the performance page and enter that in. So once we go to performance, just scroll through until we find that's the descent to the approach page, which is just here. So the QNH, I'm actually just going to use this for quickness. The QNH is 1014. The temperature is 19 degrees. I need to start that descent, don't I, in a moment. The wind is 240 at 5. Transition altitude, already said, is 6,000 feet. And in the Barrow field, our decision altitude is going to be 396. Okay, actually we do have a little bit of time. I thought we were a bit closer to Kidley than we were, but we're not. We're about 20 miles away. So that's okay. Company message is showing there, and that's just because of the weather, that weather request. So on the McDo menu, to the ATSU, AOC, messages received. There's the METAR, and of course it would have been much easier if I could have printed that. Once that's printed, you can then put that information just here, and then that makes entering in the information in the performance page really nice and neat, as you can see, because you can just copy all the information. So other things I want to check on the charts, I want to check the ILS frequency, which is 110.9. And I'm going to go to my RadNav page and check that that's been put in automatically for me. If not, I can fill that in myself. But there it is, 110.9, so that's there. I also then, to help me with my descent, if I know I want to be at 4,000 feet at Mayfield, according to this approach chart just here, so 4,000 feet at Mayfield, I can pop this in the VOR, MAY 117.9, 117.9, that matches up. I'm just going to now check to see if we've got any speed restrictions. The only speed restrictions we've got is 220 knots at Holly. We can also check this is all coded in correctly on the approach. So there's Midhurst, MID. Where have you gone? There we go. Midhurst, then Tufos, then Holly, and then after Holly we're going up to Mayfield. Okay, so let's start our descent down to flight level 200. So we're going to go 200. We're then going to pull this to enter open descent. So thrust idle, open descent, and at this point I'm going to pull the speed as well so that I can control the rate of descent. So the Airbus in open descent mode uses its speed to control its rate of descent. So if you wind the speed up, you will descend faster. If you pull the speed back and slow it down, you will descend slower.
Free drinks are still available from the cabin crew until the seatbelt signs are turned on. Please note, however, that the toilets will shortly go out of use.
Looks like we're in for quite a cloudy approach actually, if the weather stays like this. If we have a look at the METAR, what have we got? We've got a few clouds at 2,300 feet, but visibility is fine, so that's good. So I've still got the anti-ice on at the moment. We've come out of that cloud layer. We could turn it off, but realistically we're going to probably put that back on in a few minutes as we start to continue our descent down into the clouds. So a couple of other things to check for our arrival. The runway length at Gatwick is nice and long, so no need to use a auto brake. The runway elevation as shown there is 196, and then we need to know the missed approach altitude. So if we did have a problem, we're going to go climb to 3,000 feet. So 3,000 feet is going to be the missed approach altitude we pop into the autopilot in the case of a missed approach. So now speed and alt star. Our next waypoint is actually we should have been at flight level 150 by Kidley, but that's okay. So what we're looking for now is we want to be 4,000 feet at Mayfield. So now if we turn on the VOR1, can we get that? There we go. So we're showing there we're currently 67 miles away from Mayfield. So some quick maths, we're at 20,000 feet, we want to be at 4,000 feet, so we need to lose 16,000 feet, so 16 multiplied by 3 is 48 miles. So if we start on our descent around 48 miles away, we shouldn't be too far off. However, remember we do have to slow down. So if we look to start our descent at around 55 miles away, that should give us time. So just whilst we've got 20 miles or so, 20 miles or so is great. There's a lot happening on this flight, and I appreciate it because it is such a short one. Is anyone actually flying along, or going to watch it back at some point and do it at their own leisure? Nick, even though it's a long runway, would you not use the auto brake medium for a shorter taxi back to the gate, or is it a wear and tear thing? I think it's more a wear and tear thing. There are some airports where if you've got the option of taking a taxiway or having to backtrack, then obviously you want to get in and slow down before the taxiway, don't you? Lewis, Aviation, you flying along? Excellent. You got the sim last week, so you're still getting used to it. Oh, I hope you're finding it exciting.
Ladies and gentlemen,
okay, so we're now going to start our descent down to 4,000 feet.
Savings with our boutique range. In your in-flight brochure, you'll find details of our award-winning selection of gifts, most with
so set 4,000 feet,
some of
pull,
which are exclusive
thrust
to you
idle,
as an Easyjet customer.
open descent,
Make the most of your opportunity to shop
down we go.
and save from the
And we're also going to
set
set the local pressure, which was
Any questions
1014.
or would like to make great savings, then just ask us as we join you in the cabin shortly.
I'm just going to double check that. Was that 1014? Yeah, 1014. Mike, no, even with a long runway, well, especially with a long runway, you still wouldn't use auto brake low. There's no need for it. The brakes on an A320 are quite expensive, and if you've got idler reverse, then that will do the job quite nicely. Digital flight deck. Good afternoon. Hope you are well. Duke 55, that's good to know. Toga, wouldn't you rather use auto brake and no reverse thrust instead? There are some airports, particularly usually nighttime flights, where reverse thrust isn't allowed. Well, reverse thrust isn't allowed. Reverse idle, that's different. So normally they just want you using reverse idle. But at the end of the day, it's all to do with safety. So now all we're doing is monitoring that rate of descent. We're obviously now on our way down, as you can see. 47 miles from Mayfield, and you have to remember that's as the crow flies. So if I just zoom out a little bit, you'll see Mayfield is just here. So we're not flying direct to Mayfield, we're having to fly this full route here, so there are some extra track miles to go with that. Guys, see, would you use the reverse thrusters at Gatwick? Yes, you would. So we're nicely below profile at the moment, but that's okay. But remember, we do have to start slowing down below 10,000 feet. Digitally, yeah, the Vida brick is showing up. I have found it to be a little bit hit and miss, but I think RMP approaches can't be too far away. Right, we're entering that cloud layer. Let's get the anti-ice on. Papa Crash, we need both flight directors on, obviously, just for visual reference for both the pilot flying, pilot monitoring, but it's also to do with speed and the auto thrust as well. If you get yourself on our Discord, there's a great explanation with regards to flight directors and why they are required, which goes into a lot of detail. So I definitely recommend joining our Discord server for that. Guys, have I ever used the reserve runway Gatwick? Do you mean, as we're coming in, it's going to be 26 right, but do you mean 26, yeah, do you mean 26 right? No. Okay, let's get the seatbelt signs on. We're going to run the approach checklist now, so our minimums are set both sides, and engine mode select is norm, electronic flybag is stowed, and we've briefed our approach. Our approach is quite nicely shown here on arrival into Gatwick. Nick, thank you for calling up Discord. And Leslie and Raphael and Vlad, thank you very much for subscribing on YouTube. Really do appreciate that. Okay, so we're coming up to 10,000 feet. We're going to start winding that speed back now down to 250 knots. So the aircraft will begin to level off in order for that to happen. We'll also get the landing lights on. So as you can see, we've leveled off. That allows the aircraft to slow down. Once it's reached 250 knots, that will begin to descend again. And around 30 miles away from Mayfield at 10,000 feet is pretty good. So we have another speed restriction to follow, and that is on this initial approach. Is it the initial approach or is it the star? It's part of the star. So at Holly we need to be 220 knots. Simon, thank you for subscribing. That looks rather bleak over London, doesn't it, at the moment? And as we start to approach the airfield, we can turn on the LS, the landing system, and as you can see we're 17.5 miles away. However, we have to come round to the other side, so don't pay too much attention to that at the moment. It's just nice to know we've picked up the ILS information.
Cabin crew, please prepare the cabin for landing.
Simon and Duke55, thank you for subscribing. Hopefully you'll find these tutorial videos useful. And I think they're probably much easier to, rather than watching them live, go back and watch in your own time and then fly alongside trying to emulate everything. Of course, if you're using live weather, the weather may be slightly different. And I will pop in a link to the operational flight plan again just before we exit, so that you have got that. Nick, has it been looking stormy for you guys? Fair enough. I've got to go walk the dog after this, so it better not be raining. Okay, now, due to a bug in the simulator at the moment, something you need to keep an eye on.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The top right hand corner. No, let the
Please
PA
ensure
finish.
your cabin bag is safely stowed with your laptop inside. Your tray table must be stowed, armrest down, and window blind open. You now need to be seated with your seatbelt fastened, ready for landing. Please help us by handing in any rubbish, newspapers, or magazines that you do not want to take with you. The toilets are no longer in service.
He's very polite, isn't he? Okay, so due to a bug within the simulator, and this is a flight simulator bug, not a fly-by-wire bug, always pay attention on the approach to the top right-hand side of the navigation display. At the moment, you can see that we are going to Holly, and that is correct. That is where we want to be going to. However, we're going to activate the approach phase pretty soon, or sometimes if you pass the decel point, it will do it automatically. I'm just having a look on here to see if the decel point is showing on here. It doesn't seem to be, unless we've already passed it. The way to check that is if you go to the performance page and the first page up, right, so it says activate the approach phase. That will not be there. If you have already passed the decel point and activated the approach phase, then that will not be there. If you go to the flight plan, it should tell you where it is. Oh, so it is, it should be between these two. It's just not showing on here for some reason. But sometimes when the approach phase gets activated, then it can jump waypoints, which is really rather annoying. If that happens, what we're going to do is immediately pull the heading bug to continue flying straight. We're then going to go to direct, and then we're going to re-engage the waypoint we want to head direct to. So we're now going to start slowing down to 220 knots as per the chart. So there's a 220 knot speed restriction at Holly, and that's actually showing with the constraints as well. Look, if you see there. And if we look out of here, we may have got a glimpse of Gatwick. No, maybe not quite. We may just be a little bit too far south to see that. So we're at speed and alt star. We're at 4,000 feet, more or less. About 13 miles early, so plenty of time just there. Ideally, if you can, of course, you want to be hitting it bang on the money. It just means now the engines are going to have to spool up because we're not using gravity to keep our speed up, and we're just going to be burning some fuel, which is not what the airline's like, but never mind. Okay, so now we should be starting to bank left, and we'll go direct to Mayfield in a moment. You can see Mayfield has changed. However, it is still targeting Holly, as you can see from the navigation display. Once it's done that, then it's going to start to bank left in a moment, and that's okay. Once we've done that, we can activate the approach phase. And you can see the line has changed as well. If I just zoom out a little bit, you can see. So the flight plan normally gets screwed up a little bit when I'm activating the approach phase, as I imagine now. If we go to the performance page, yep, you'll see activate approach phase is gone. It's already in the approach phase. And what that means is if you are in managed mode for your speed, then your aircraft will start to slow down as you deploy the flaps. So now we're inbound Mayfield. We want to pass Mayfield at 4,000 feet. Approach phase is already activated. London Gatwick is somewhere over there. Can't quite see it, but it's definitely there. So then from Mayfield we're going to start our descent down to the platform altitude 2,000 feet and begin our capturing of the ILS. So with regards to flaps then, as long as we've got flaps 2 out and down before we descend with the glide slope. So ideally what I like to try and do is be flaps 1 as we're capturing the ILS, and then flaps 2 as we start to see the glide slope moving down, and then with a little bit of a balloon effect that you get from flaps 2, it sometimes just lifts you up into the glide slope and enables you to capture that quite nicely. Welcome back, HD. Anti-ice. Oh, anti-ice is still on. We probably don't need it. It's definitely warm enough not to require that. Unless, of course, there were thunderstorms, but they don't seem to have materialised just yet. So what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to engage managed mode, which means the aircraft is going to target the green dot speed. So engage managed mode, and we'll start to slow down. And we're going to descend to 2,000 feet. Again, open descent, so thrust idle. Open descent. And down we go. We can just see that VOR needle moving as it was tuned to the Mayfield VOR. And then, depending on how the aircraft flies this, because it's not always perfect at the moment in the sim, I could pop this in heading mode now and basically simulate vectors. And I think that's what I'm going to do, because sometimes, as you can see, the aircraft doesn't behave how I want it to. So I'm now in heading mode, so air traffic control will be giving me, saying, fly heading 009 degrees, and then in 2-3 minutes it'll say turn left, intercept ILS, cleared ILS approach. So, still 12 miles out. And as HD has said, what we can do is we can use VS to try and keep a continuous descent down there to 2,000 feet. So what we're going to do in a minute is we're going to put flaps 1 out, but we don't really want to go any slower than 180 knots. So then we can pull the speed bug to sort that out. So there's speed alt start, Let's start configuring. So now we'll go flaps 1 and a speed check. Make sure that we're not going to overspeed, and there's a little reference tool there if you need to. You can also look at where the yellow equal signs are. So flaps 1. The aircraft is now going to slow down to S speed, and I want to hold that. We don't want to go any slower than S speed when we flaps 1 out, so let's hold 195 knots and now make a left hand turn to start intercepting that localizer. So we'll turn on the localizer capture, and we've got lock star. So it started to capture the localizer. With lock star we can press approach, and on autopilot 2 now we can check. We've got speed, alt and lock star, glide slope blue, cat 3 dual, autopilot 1 and 2, and now we're just watching the speed. And we can bring this around as it captures the glide slope. Sorry, the localizer. Glide slope is alive, so let's get flaps 2 out. We're below the maximum speed for flaps 2, so let's go flaps 2 and set 180 knots. So if you can, 180 knots until about 8 miles away, and then from 6 miles you can start configuring towards your final approach speed. So I'm just going to ding that cabin. And there we can see London Gatwick ahead of us. Glide slope is now starting to come in. Let's start slowing down to 160 knots as we capture that glide slope. Glide slope start, so glide slope's been captured. We can now set missed approach altitude, which is 3,000 feet. And then coming up 5 miles, let's get the gear down. So, landing gear on the spoilers. Get the lights on. And go back into managed speed. Flaps 3. Followed by flaps full. And then the landing checklist. Cabin secured for landing. Auto thrust speed. Go around altitude of 3,000 feet is set. ECAM memo landing no blue.
1,000.
And then 1,000 feet. And then one of the tricky parts I find is trying to get the nice perfect viewpoint for the actual landing view. So 1,000 feet. Happy now to disconnect autopilot. So autopilot 1 and 2 disconnected. I have control. Downgraded to Cat 1. And now we're just scanning the runway ahead of us, as well as obviously looking at the instruments down here. Make sure we're on the glide slope. But once we get below 500, as we just heard the call, approach is stable. Most of that is now reliant upon the pappies and what you can see out the window. Let's just get that centre line back. We've just drifted ever so slightly to the left.
300. 100 above.
And now just concentrate on the landing.
200. Minimum.
Continue.
$100. 50, 40, 30, 20, retard, 10, 5.
And the spoilers are deployed, reversers are on. Manual braking, positive decel, 70 knots, reversers off. And we're down, so we'll vacate to the next taxiway on to the right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the cabin crew will shortly be leaving their seats to perform safety-related duties. However, we ask that you remain seated until the fasten seatbelt sign has been switched off. Portable electronic devices for messaging, calls or internet access may now be used. Please make sure that you take all your personal belongings with you, checking in the seat pocket, underneath the seat and in the overhead lockers. Do take care when opening the lockers in case anything falls out. Smoking is not permitted until you reach a designated smoking area. On behalf of the captain and the crew, it has been our pleasure looking after you today. Our ground crew will help you complete your Easyjet journey. For the latest news, promotions, flight and destination information, check out our official Facebook page, Twitter or Easyjet app.
Okay, so we vacated on to the parallel runway, which is now normally used as a taxiway here at Gatwick. We've retracted the ground spoilers, we've turned off all the lights, leaving on just the taxi lights. We've got the APU started. And we also, before we get back to the terminal, we want to turn the weather radar off, the wind shear off, get the transponder onto standby, and of course TCAS, get rid of that. And then we'll just go and plonk this at the first stand we can. We can now get the push buttons all turned off, get the flaps back up. And then we'll just taxi and shut down. We could also do a single engine taxi to save fuel, in which case, in order to do that, we're going to turn off engine 2 and then we're going to turn on the yellow electric pump up here, and that just helps control our speed and as well as saving fuel, of course. If you're on VATSIM as well, pay attention to all ATC instructions. This is the freeware Gatwick mod as well, which is looking fabulous. Available from flightsim.to. So we'll talk about shutting the aircraft down as well once we've taxied in. If you are on your way out, would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button on the stream for me. And we'll just taxi ourselves in now. Since the last update for the simulator, I have found performance to be much better. I mean, this airport here, this modern Gatwick airport, is very heavy on the frames, lots of detail, as you can see. Great airport, but a bit of a frame killer. And Jess, good evening. Just seen you in the chat. Hope you're well. HD, the hydraulics page is now working to an extent, so we'll can check that out in a second. Bear with me. Oh, it is working, except I've got a slightly older dev version of which it wasn't updated to. I need to download the latest one. It is working. I just need to download the latest version. Then it will work beautifully. So, stand 109 is looking rather good. So, before we turn, we'll just get the taxi lights off. I don't want to blind the ground crew, but they're all stood there waiting for us, including a marshaller, I think. APU, HD APU should be on before you shut it down. I think we've got the APU on, haven't we? Yeah, APU's on. But all our passengers are now down in Gatwick looking nice. So much detail in this airport. You'd gladly pay for this, wouldn't you? Kudos to the developer of Gatwick. And then we're just trying to stop. I don't particularly want to go any further, but he's still waving me forward. How far are we away from the stop line? Do you know what? I'm pretty darn close. I'm going to leave that just there. Okay, let's now set the parking brakes, and we can turn off engine number 1. We can turn off the seatbelt signs. Oh, hang on, I forgot about this. We've got the logbook. There we go. Okay, so now we can turn off the seatbelt signs. Check N1 is below 10%. Beacon lights can come off as well. And then we can start to get ready and deboard the aircraft using this new little mod, which is so neat.
Cabin crew, safety disarm the doors, thank you.
So the GPU will be coming over any second, and then we can get the external ground power connected up. So now we're just going to check and shut down the aircraft. So the parking brake is on, anti-ice is off, electric pump is off, engine 1 and 2s are off, slides are disarmed, seat belts off, beacon is off. We can stop the timer as well. Now we're on stand. Transponder set standby squawk 2000. And we can turn off the fuel tanks. Let me just get rid of that window. We can turn the ADIRs off as well, as we're done for the evening. Check the fuel quantity is just under 2.5 tons. Oh, bang on HD. That's what you said was realistic right at the start of the stream, wasn't it? And system status is fine. Check the brake temperatures. They're okay. We can leave those. And now connect the external power, APU master, and bleed off. And then we run the parking checklist. So APU bleed is off, electric plump, yellow electric plump is off, engines are off, seatbelt signs are off. External lights, we can turn those off as well just now. Parking brake or chocks and chocks as required. Transponder is standby 2000. All radars are off. And securing the aircraft, we can turn off the electronic flight bag. There we go, gone. Fuel pumps are off, the ADIRs are off. Turn off the oxygen. APU bleed is off. Emergency exit lights, no smoking, off as well. And that's it, we're all done. At the moment only the external ground power is there, but we can get rid of him. We'd obviously wait until all passengers were disembarked, but turn that off. And we've now got a cold and dark flight deck again. Turn off the batteries 1 and 2. There we go, job done. So hopefully you guys have found that tutorial of some use, all the way from Manchester to Gatwick. I say all the way, wasn't the longest flight in the world, was it? But there we are, and that should hopefully give you a chance to follow that along at some point, and then hone your skills in on flying that. It wasn't a very long cruise, so we didn't really get too much chance to answer any questions, but please do hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification light bell, so you're notified of when we're doing our next live flight, because usually we have a much longer cruise time than that, so we can chat, answer any questions. But a big thanks to HD in the chat for fielding some of those, and to Digital Flight Deck as well. Big thank you to those of you that have donated, contributed to the channel's upkeep, and of course to our Easyjetsimpilot members for your continued support of the channel. Hope you guys found that useful and can obviously rewatch this at any point. And for those of you that want to use this particular flight plan, I'm just going to pop that into the chat there on YouTube, so you can go ahead and download that, use it as and when you wish. Please hit the like button on the way out, I would really appreciate that. It does make a massive difference to the channel. Yeah, there we go. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Any questions, leave a comment down below, and I'll get back to you. Hope you all have a great evening, and I'll see you on the next flight. Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck once again, I hope you have enjoyed your flight with us today here on Easyjet. On behalf of myself, the first officer and the cabin crew, may we wish you a safe and pleasant journey from the airport, and we hope to see you again very soon. In order to increase the comfort of your next flight, please take a look at joining the Easyjetsimpilot channel, and we offer extra perks for those frequent flyers. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you once again for flying with Easyjet.